The economic divide between Eastern and Western Europe has persisted for decades, creating stark contrasts in wealth, stability, and development between the two regions. This disparity is rooted in a complex interplay of historical, political, and geographical factors, which have shaped the evolution of these regions in profoundly different ways. Despite ongoing efforts to bridge the gap, Eastern Europe continues to lag behind its Western counterparts in many key economic indicators, although recent trends indicate some signs of improvement and potential convergence. The origins of this divide can be traced back to the aftermath of World War II and the ensuing Cold War period. With the end of World War II, Europe was effectively divided into two spheres of influence. The Western Bloc, supported by the United States, adopted a capitalist economic model and democratic governance, while the Eastern Bloc, under the dominance of the Soviet Union, implemented a communist system characterized by centralized planning and state control over economic activities. This division created two vastly different economic paradigms that set the stage for the stark economic disparities that persist to this day. The economic recovery of Western Europe was greatly facilitated by the Marshall Plan, a US-led initiative that provided financial aid to rebuild war-torn economies and laid the foundation for long-term growth and prosperity. This aid, combined with a focus on free markets, private enterprise, and technological innovation, allowed Western European countries to modernize rapidly and establish robust industrial bases. The integration of these nations into the European Economic Community, which later evolved into the European Union, further strengthened economic ties, reduced trade barriers, and facilitated the free movement of goods, capital, and labor across national borders. This created a highly integrated and competitive economic bloc that became one of the most prosperous regions in the world. In stark contrast, Eastern Europe, under Soviet control, pursued a centrally planned economic model that prioritized heavy industry and state ownership at the expense of consumer goods and services. The lack of competition and market incentives stifled productivity, innovation, and efficiency, leading to chronic shortages, low-quality goods, and economic stagnation. When communism collapsed in 1991, the newly independent nations of Eastern Europe faced the daunting task of transitioning from state-controlled economies to market-oriented systems. The rapid privatization of state-owned enterprises often led to the creation of oligarchic structures, with a few individuals accumulating vast wealth and political influence, while the broader population saw little improvement in living standards. Geographical factors have also played a significant role in shaping the divergent economic trajectories of Eastern and Western Europe. Western Europe's extensive coastlines along the Atlantic Ocean, the North Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea have provided easy access to global trade routes and facilitated the development of maritime industries. During the Age of Exploration, countries like Britain, France, and Spain established vast colonial empires, extracting resources and wealth that fueled their economic expansion. This early integration into global trade networks gave Western Europe a substantial economic head start that allowed it to build a prosperous, diversified economy. In contrast, much of Eastern Europe is landlocked or has limited access to navigable waterways, making it more difficult to engage in international trade and limiting its economic opportunities. The region's geography, characterized by vast plains and few natural barriers, has also made it vulnerable to invasions and conflicts throughout history, further complicating its economic development. Countries like Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus have historically served as battlegrounds for competing powers, leading to repeated cycles of destruction and reconstruction that have hindered long-term economic stability. The differences between the two regions are also evident in their levels of integration into the European Union. Many Eastern European countries sought EU membership after the fall of communism, viewing it as a pathway to stability, economic growth, and integration with the prosperous Western economies. For countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, joining the EU in the early 2000s brought significant benefits, including access to structural funds, increased trade and investment opportunities. These countries have seen rapid economic growth and development, driven by investments in infrastructure, education, and technology. However, other countries, such as Romania and Bulgaria, have struggled to fully capitalize on EU membership due to persistent issues with corruption, weak governance, and a lack of institutional capacity. Despite joining the EU in 2007, these countries have faced ongoing challenges in implementing the necessary reforms to improve transparency, strengthen the rule of law, and reduce corruption. As a result, they have lagged behind their more successful neighbors in terms of economic development and living standards. For nations outside the EU, such as Ukraine, Belarus, and several Western Balkan states, the absence of EU membership continues to be a significant impediment to economic development. Political instability, ongoing conflicts, and governance challenges make it difficult for these countries to attract foreign investment and establish a stable economic environment. For instance, Ukraine, which has been embroiled in a conflict with Russia since 2014, has faced significant economic and political upheaval, further hindering its prospects for growth. While there have been some signs of recovery, the ongoing war with Russia makes it unlikely that Ukraine will achieve economic stability in the near future. The demographic challenges facing Eastern Europe are another significant factor contributing to the region's economic difficulties. Many Eastern European countries are experiencing population decline due to low birth rates and high levels of emigration, particularly among young, educated individuals. This brain drain has depleted the region of skilled labor, reducing its capacity for innovation and economic growth. Countries like Poland and Hungary have attempted to counteract these trends with policies aimed at encouraging higher birth rates and attracting expatriates back home, but these efforts have had limited success. By contrast, Western Europe, with its higher levels of immigration, has been able to maintain a more stable demographic profile, which has supported continued economic growth. Recent economic forecasts suggest that Eastern Europe is beginning to show signs of recovery, with average growth rates in the region expected to be higher than those in Western Europe in 2024. This growth is being driven by falling inflation, rising real wages, and increased private consumption. Countries like Romania and Poland are expected to see growth rates of around 3.0%, while the Western Balkans are projected to grow by 2.6%. Moldova is forecasted to show the most dynamic growth at 3.7%, reflecting its strong rebound from recent economic difficulties. Despite these positive developments, the gap between Eastern and Western Europe remains significant. The average per capita GDP in Western Europe is still several times higher than in most Eastern European nations. Moreover, the economic benefits of EU membership have not been evenly distributed across Eastern Europe, with some countries achieving much greater success than others. Persistent issues such as corruption, weak institutions, and political instability continue to impede progress in many parts of the region. Addressing these challenges will require sustained efforts to strengthen governance, invest in human capital, and implement reforms aimed at improving transparency and reducing corruption. In summary, the economic divide between Eastern and Western Europe is the result of a complex interplay of historical, geographical, and political factors. While recent developments suggest that Eastern Europe is beginning to narrow the gap, the process of convergence is likely to be slow and uneven. Achieving true economic parity with Western Europe will require not only economic growth, but also significant improvements in governance, institutional capacity, and social cohesion. As Europe faces new challenges in an increasingly interconnected world, the ability of the continent to bridge this divide will be crucial for its long-term stability and prosperity.